thank you for joining us. My name is Todd Felton, and I help lead digital strategy here at StitchDX. We have two thought leaders of the digital workplace. We have our own Eric Strigalis, President and Chief Strategist here at StitchDX. And then we've also invited Lauren Phelps, who's a Senior Account Executive for Powell Software. All right. Well, welcome, Eric and Lauren. Great to have you guys here. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Why are we here? So the last 6 months, 8 months, we've seen tremendous change, right? I don't need to convince anybody on this call that the world's a different place than it was back in January and February. And the reality is we're not going back there. We may go back to our workplaces, but they're not going to look like what they did in January. And as far as the digital workplace is concerned, there's been tremendous change. Some of it's been brought about by the digital workplace, but some of it has been brought about by innovations in technology, right? And we have seen just tremendous adoption. A lot of the organizations that we've seen have jumped to Microsoft Teams. That's been exciting, as is the new innovations that have come along as a result of so much time and energy being poured into it. At the same time, we've also seen a tremendous jump in how the need for communications along organizations. People are needing to hear from their senior leaders and needing to hear from have access to resources about when they're going to move to work from home, when they're going to come back to the office, what it's going to look like. Yeah. So again, times of tremendous change, and it's really thrown the whole digital workplace into disarray. There's been a lot of chaos and changes, and out of this is going to come the future. And that's why we're here today. And so I'm going to toss the first question to you, Eric. What is it going to look like moving on from here?
Yeah, well, thanks very much. So I think, as you said, trying to convince people that it's changed is the easy part. And I think to understand where we're going, we have to understand where we are, at the very least where we've been, because I think the future is right now. I think things have already changed. So, we talk a lot about change. It's been very dramatic. I mean, over a very short period of time, about 6 months, at least on the East Coast, everything has been upended. But the reality is that the things that we're dealing with right now, working from home and remote work, these are old ideas, right? This is part of a change that's been in the process for a long time. And the pandemic has really just accelerated that change, and it's certainly added some additional challenges to that. But these are things that we've been dealing with and talking about for a while. And so as organizations have been working on adapting and just basically trying to survive this massive shift, everyone's been leaning more on their technology and their digital workplace to really just ensure, business continuity. And that massive adoption of Teams, and there was like 100 million active users almost overnight. I've been a huge proponent of Teams for a long time, Todd, that. I've been talking about Teams for a while, precisely because I think it's been a game changer for how we really think about the digital workplace and how we're going to operate the digital workplace. So right now, what's happening? There's a big shift, and I'm going to share my screen really quickly because I've got just two short slides that I want to share around this. So I think the sort of traditional digital workplace model that we're used to is putting the intranet at the center of the digital workplace. And we call it the hub, we call it the portal, we call it the gateway. It's really the way that we connect our users and our people with the broader digital workplace. It's also where we bring together communication and information and collaboration and self-service. But the truth is that it's really disjointed and it's fragmented, right? We spend a lot of time trying to bring all of this together, and it's a lot of work and energy and effort. And the big challenge that we end up having after all of that is, just getting people to show up, right? And it's really hard to drive engagement with people who aren't engaged. So that these are some of the challenges that we're facing. And along comes Microsoft Teams. And what Microsoft Teams has really enabled is to put the user back in the center of the digital workplace. I mean, really put the user at the center. Whereas when we talk about the intranet as the center of the digital workplace, we're really talking about what are the goals and objectives that we have as an organization and how do we get those through. So here's where we are today. Here's where I think we are going. In fact, where we are actually today. I should have said where we were and where we are now. Right, Teams is really at the center. It's the hub of the digital workplace, and the argument that I'm making is that by bringing together the intranet into Teams, what you're doing is you're really, instead of leading the horse to water, you're bringing the water to the horse. We're solving that big problem of trying to drive engagement and forcing people to show up to our intranet. We're starting to see a lot more of this cohesiveness too, because this is where people are working, right? And the one thing I'll say, and this is the last thing I'll say before I throw it back, Todd, is that the intranet is still really important and valuable, right? The intranet is where you help to align your organization against the values and the mission and the vision and the goals and the objective of the organization. It's where you tell the stories about the successes of the organization, and you drive home the brand values of the organization. And that Teams is where you're actually putting all of those things to work. You don't want your people spending all their time in the intranet. As much as we want to be sticky and engaging, you need people to be productive, and so the productive time is being spent today in Teams. So I think the future and the future is now, and the new digital workplace model is really focused on Teams as a center, with the intranet as part of that. And as part of the focal point, the centerpiece of the digital workplace.
Thanks. How about you, Lauren? What are you seeing with Powell? Does this align with how Powell's viewing the future of the digital workplace?
It really does. And, I think Eric's comments are really spot on. If 6 months ago, if we looked at what the analysts were speaking about, they were talking about digital workplace by 2023 being this $30 billion market segment. So what that means is folks are thinking about how do I drive adoption to that new model, right? Fast forward, again, we still live in this pandemic time, and we're all dealing with that. Everything changed radically, again, to Eric's point. And what that means is the organizations who are nimble and are, almost thought leaders in their space started to look at ways that how can I drive engagement across my employees? How do I communicate from a corporate perspective to ensure that my employees know what they need to know, information is pertinent, but then they also become engaged. And as they become engaged, they are now more productive, right? And that's, I think, the goal of any digital workplace. So picking on, Microsoft Teams, to Eric's point, it exploded exponentially. I mean, it surpassed Slack and Zoom and all the other tools that, we're all used to using. And frankly, in my previous place of employment, we had exactly that. We had Zoom, we had GoToMeeting, we had Slack. I mean, we had everything under the sun, but I think we're starting to see that shift now, where folks are starting to adopt that single point or that single pane of glass, right? So that folks know where to go and find information. They know where to go and communicate. I think we're seeing that absolute shift right now. And, from a Powell perspective, as we go out and engage with our customers and with our prospects, as well as our partners, we're hearing the same thing. Some of the things that are coming back, a CEO will say, I understand I need that central pane of glass, but help us get there. So I think that's a big part of it too. It's the discovery. It's how we help to drive adoption. Notably, it is a shift. It is change. Employees are usually very adverse to change, but I think when they see the end goal and that inflection point between communication and collaboration and how seamless it can be and how easy it is to access what an employee needs to access on a regular basis, that's where the excitement comes in. So we are hearing a lot of kind of thumbs up on where we're going and how we're starting to communicate.
Great. I want to come back to some of the process and some of the things that are sticking in. Eric, I've got a question, but Eric,
I was just going to say, I think one of the things that we're hearing a lot is that it's the challenge of knowing where to communicate, right? Because Teams is becoming such a focal point, and people are spending so much of their time in Teams. This is really where they're collaborating, right? That we talked about collaboration as part of the intranet originally, but really it wasn't collaboration, right? It was really mostly top-down communication and a little bit of sideways communication. But the reality is that this is where the real collaboration is happening. And so now there's this whole question about, well, where do I communicate? If I'm in marketing, or if I'm in corporate communications, am I pushing the messaging out through Teams because that's where people are, or am I pushing it out still through my intranet and then hoping that people come there? But really, I don't want them to spend too much time there because that's not the productive time. And so this is the challenge, right? And so what we're trying to do here is solve this big problem of, communication happens in a lot of different places. It's still happening in email. Email hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away. And so your intranet is still valuable, still important, but it just plays a different role now in conjunction with Microsoft Teams.
I agree. And I just want to pick on one comment, if I may. Eric talked about email. And I think if you ask any organization, is there an inordinate, amount of email that crosses the organization? Everyone's going to say yes. Enter Teams, and I can chat very quickly. I can collaborate. It's picking on that productivity piece. And I think the better job that an organization does in allowing their employees to be productive, the better job the organization will do as a whole.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about the challenges facing implementation, right? So, this is the promised land. This is the place where productivity is seamless. There's less friction. I always like to talk about friction, right? That it's for employees to get to the things that they need. You want to reduce the amount of steps that they have to go to get there. So this is that seamless pane of glass, single pane of glass. For most organizations that have they've just been forced to work primarily remotely, or they've adopted Teams wholesale where they may have been dabbling. Again, tons of challenges. Their intranet may have been a fully functioning one. It may have just been a link farm. Where does an organization that is in this moment, what are the steps that they take to get to where you guys are talking about? And what are some of the challenges that you guys see along the way?
Yeah.
I mean, Eric, do you want me to kind of kick off? I think that there's a couple of key areas to touch on. I'm going to try and hit two, and I was just jotting a note down to make sure that I don't miss it. Mm-hmm. And Eric, keep me honest. So the first is kind of Teams, and sometimes organizations really, they don't know yet what they don't know, and they might go ahead and they might deploy Teams, and then all of a sudden, 2, 3, 4 weeks later, all of a sudden they've got this term of sprawl, right? Todd, you create a team and you invite Eric, and 2 days later I create a team and I invite you both. Your team is now orphaned, right? And we see it happen very, very quickly. If you don't have this sense of governance and control and process right up front, you're going to end up scrambling after the fact to go and rein that control back in. And we're seeing both ends. I had a call last week with a government entity, and they're moving to Teams by the end of the year, right? But they are way in front of it, saying, well, help me. How do I provide governance? How do I provide structure? How do I help to ensure that my employees can be productive? How can I also help ensure that they're going to be engaged, right? Again, this is that new platform. So I think that's kind of point number one. Point number two is, Todd, we mentioned intranet, and I think as you guys actively go out and speak with clients, and as we do, one of the resounding themes that keeps coming back is, well, we've got an intranet there, but folks aren't engaged in it, right?
Yeah.
So whatever information is being shared there, folks aren't seeing it. Well, if you put the information there, it doesn't mean that people are engaged with it. So, I think the real important aspect is, and we've kicked this around a little bit, is creating that sense, or that kind of central point that platform almost, if you will, dare I say platform, that employees will be engaged and will be collaborating and can be productive. It's making, again, let's take even a bigger step back. For individuals who haven't had the work from home experience, the first thing they have to do is secure space, right? Maybe it's a dining room table or a kitchen table. And then they also have to start, blocking out time on their calendar that, hey, these are the hours that I'm working. This now becomes a place of business. That is a big and radical change for a person.
Especially for folks who have kids, by the way. I'm one of those people. So I understand that more than some.
Eric, you're spot on. I had a call with a prospect out of British Columbia, and her daughter was sitting on her lap, and she got on the call and she said, I apologize. And I just said, look, this is that new normal. Do I say this is what it is? So look, I'm totally sensitive to it. So having said all of that, again, giving them that place where they can go and communicate and collaborate and they can be productive, it's going to help ease some of the burden and stresses that they feel, right? Just as part of human nature.
Yeah. So I think those are all, I mean, you're spot on. But the two things I want to mention here is that I think one of the big challenges, just to your earlier point, I think a lot of organizations push teams out almost under duress because the pandemic came on so suddenly. I mean, one day people were in the office, the next day people got a notification saying don't come into the office again, and we don't know when you're going to come back. So they turned on Teams because they're already paying for it. It's part of O365. And all of a sudden people were, trying to figure out, okay, I have to chat here. I can open up a individual chat. I can create a team. I can create channels in those teams. And there's not a lot of, there's a lot of flexibility in Teams, which makes it a great product, frankly. But it's also, because there's so much flexibility, it can become a challenge for organizations very, very quickly, to your point around the sprawl. And so now I think organizations are starting to recognize, we've seen this firsthand, hey, there's a whole bunch of things I can do in here. It's not just about video conferencing and chat. It's also file management. And I can sync all of my files between my teams, and we're all working on the same thing, and I can collaborate on the same document at the same time, and I never have to leave Teams. And there's all these things that are happening. So I think those are the two big challenges that I'm seeing. And this is where the value of bringing in the intranet into it really pays out, right? Because it is so much more and beyond, and there is that structure that we need to provide for that.
And that's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. The training and user adoption, the rollout plan, getting people not just knowing about the Teams and your intranet, but actually being able to use the various features so they are as effective and as possible. So I know we want to take a look at what all this looks like all bundled together, but I want to ask one final question to each of you before we go. There's always one thing that you're kind of most excited about when you talk about a combination. When you take the two flavors and swirl them together, there's something that really gets you the most excited. And I think on a personal level, for some reason, the idea of events, being able to look at events, both in Teams and in my intranet, because I'll tell you, Eric, I have kids, and we all have 4 different calendars, and then I have a work calendar. My wife has a work calendar. I feel like I have 20 different calendars, and they're spread across 18 different places. So the idea of having an event hub, which I know you guys are going to talk about, that's one for me that's super exciting. What's exciting for you?
Lauren, you want to go first?
I'll give this one to you, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, because that'll feed into
I'll tell you what I'm really excited about. So, I actually have a background in organizational development, and so for me, this whole concept of engagement is so elusive, right? We talk about engagement, we talk about driving engagement. The intranet is supposed to be focused on engagement and getting people to be aligned, and but there's challenges around that. So for me, the opportunity to actually create engagement, actually try and get people to start seeing the connection between, okay, the stuff that I'm seeing in the intranet around the stories of success that the organization's having, or the work that we're doing, and I can actually now put that to use immediately within the collaboration space that I have available to me. I mean, making those like synapses fire, those connections happen within that same space, and not forcing people to have to go to a different place. In a previous webinar, and maybe we'll come back to this at another webinar again, we talked about the digital paradox, and this is a concept that I started talking about a long time ago, that we're better and we're more connected than we've ever been at any point in the history of mankind, but we're not necessarily better or more engaged. And all of the things, that slide that I had up with a digital workplace, all of those tools that we have available to us are meant to connect us, are meant to provide better connection with the organization, with each other, with our files, with our documents, with our with our work. And yet we're not necessarily better or more engaged with any of those things. And so I think finally we're in a moment where things are starting to align. Everyone's working from home, and so everyone's kind of in the same boat. We've leveled the playing field in a lot of ways, and now everyone has to go to this one place to collaborate. And if we can bring all of those pieces together in one place, you're going to start to see a lot better alignment. So I'm really excited about that opportunity, the possibility. We just have to set it up right.
Yeah,
that's the one big challenge.
Completely agree. You made a really good point, Eric, that I do want to pick on. There has never been a time greater than now where people have this need to really feel connected, right? As colleagues and to an organization. And I think, the better job that we can do as professionals to help people and help organizations achieve that, that's the most exciting thing for me. We have the same conversations, and I'm struggling. We don't have engagement. Folks can't see information that's important. Folks don't know where to go. When we can solve for all of that, and give the executive team as well as the employees a great experience to go forward, and do their jobs and perform in their roles, that to me is the most exciting thing. And that's what I'm most kind of, I hate, dare I say the word excited again, but that's what motivates me on a very regular basis, in a daily, weekly, monthly, annual type of situation.
So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to see for the folks on the call to see what we're so excited about. So Eric, if you can put up the next slides, and Lorna, sort of want you to talk through and set the table for the demo that we're going to look at, because I also want to make sure that we have plenty of time at the end for those questions that people are coming up with. And again, if you have a question, you don't have to wait to the Q&A to type it in. Feel free to type it in now. But yeah, Lauren, talk us through this. Set this up for us.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. We'll do. And folks, maybe we could even just hit on this slide. And I'm super excited to show you kind of what we have cooking here at Powell Software, and where we think this inflection point of the digital workplace is. Now, again, the analysts are saying Microsoft Teams can become that new digital workplace hub. They're not saying specifically when, but they're saying can. The exciting thing from a Powell Software perspective, and why we're excited to work with StitchDX, is we are at that inflection point today. We solve for the challenges that Eric and I are speaking to, and this is essentially what it looks like. We are bringing together both corporate communication and employee engagement, information that is pertinent coming from the organization. Again, that connection of employee to employer, but we're also bringing together that other piece of inflection, collaboration, putting the user more at the center of this experience so that they can perform at a very high level and have this single pane of glass, if you will, right there in front of them. So what it really means is we today have the ability to take your intranet and create a better user experience through a templatized approach with rapid deployment and a significant and fastest time to value, bringing that experience into Microsoft Teams so that as people are collaborating, and look, full disclosure, we leverage Microsoft Teams internally. We leverage Powell Teams internally. I do probably 85 to 90% out of my work out of Teams. So I can easily flip between the two. It's a very seamless experience, and frankly, it keeps me focused, and it keeps me productive.
Yeah.
And Eric, I don't know if you want to throw a comment to that, and then maybe what we do is ask Laurent to go ahead and just start stepping us through it. But Eric,
yeah. The only thing I would say is, as a obviously we're a Powell partner. The reason we're a Powell partner, the reason that we've chosen to work with Powell, is that we really strongly believe that this is the future, and Powell is putting a lot of effort into innovating how Teams and the Powell intranet function together, so that you are bringing these two pieces together, and that you're making the most out of your O365 investment, and that you're able to go to basically bring all these pieces to where people are. Right? Again, it's the whole bringing the water to the horse as opposed to hoping that they come.
Yeah.
Exactly. So quick time check, and it looks like we are at the bottom of the hour. So Todd, I think I would suggest that perhaps we let Laurent kind of step us through this.
That's exactly where I was headed.
Perfect.
Okay, so thank you everybody for your great comments, and we fully agree, of course, on that. My name is Laurent. I'm currently pre-sales engineer at Powell Software, and I will share my screen to present the experience that we can get using Powell Intranet and Powell Team. So here I am connected in Microsoft Teams.
Laurent, I don't think you see your screen yet.
There we go.
Yeah, I have it. Thank you, Laurent.
Thank you. So here we are connected in Microsoft Teams with Linda. So I'm Linda today, and I have a bunch of teams. As you can see, there's a lot of teams in this environment because, of course, it's a demo environment, but you will get to that point because actually, internally, for example, we have a lot of teams with partners, so I'm invited everywhere. So the first thing to notice here is I have two extra buttons. So you have the activity, calls and files and chat, which is a standard from Microsoft, but I have two actually extra shortcuts on the left. The first one is Powell Team, and we'll come back to that later. But this one could be your own intranet digital workplace. So we call it here Powell 365, but of course it can have your own logo and the name, of course, the brand that you have on your own intranet. So as you can see here, I am in Teams, and I can access a lot of information coming from the corporate information on the top, and also personalized information coming from my department. So here I am, Linda. I think I'm in my profile, I'm in HR, but I may be interested in other departments or communication channels here. So let's select communication, and then my display of the news will change accordingly. So it means that we can target specific information based on the profile of the user, and we can also have this kind of local contribution and global contribution, and put all those pieces together into a single user interface. So the idea also is I have access, of course, to my application because I'm remote, and depending on my profile, depending on my company or my subsidiary, I may have different tool for vacation, different tool for travels, etc. So this quick access link you see on the right is completely customized also by user profile, because you may have grown by acquisition, acquire lots of companies, so there may be a lot of tool internally to do all the jobs around taking holidays, vacation, updating my profile in HR tool, etc. So here we wanted to have this quick access right in front at the home page. Also here, what you notice is we have this bar, the Powell bar, actually will help the contributor to enter content into the intranet, but also will provide a search experience across different elements. So if I type for example, Powell here, you will see that the search automatically we suggest some of the term here. Are you looking for section? Then we have people showing up with the name Powell, or maybe in their profile they have Powell. Then the recent sites that are talking about Powell. and also the documents. So here we're mixing different technology coming from Office 365. What's important here is everything is stored into your Office 365 environment. So it respects security, privacy, and it also ensures that all the good security measure that Microsoft is taking is embedded into the intranet that you will release. So here I'm typing maybe Powell, but I'm searching across all the sites, but also into Delve. Actually, it's an engine that's analyzing the interaction between user and suggesting me relevant content according to the last document that I've opened or the last content that I've read. So basically, I can then hit enter, and I'll be redirected to a more broader search center when I have a view also on the type of content I'm searching. So here you can see we have news, we have people, we have sites, we have images, documents, etc. And of course, to ease the search, we provide a user interface to refine the information and to find the right news, the right document, the right profile.
Laurent, let me just jump in for a second. The ideal sort of scenario for this is, maybe you're in a conversation with your team, with your organization, and then you need to figure out some kind of you need to find some policy, HR policy, let's say. Yeah, you don't have to leave Teams to go and find that policy in a separate window, in a separate intranet site. You just click on, your intranet icon on the left, and then you get right into that, and you never have to leave. So there's actually a lot of value in what we're showing here around being able to access lots and lots of resources and documents and information at the tip of your fingers.
Absolutely. Another use cases could be a user help, for example. So you can define multiple pages talking about governance or onboarding a new employee could also be embedded into team in a form like this when you have pages, the links you have to know, the tools, manuals you have to consult in order to go into vacation, etc. So all the policies, everything could be, for example, in an HR department or on a specific site dedicated to that. And of course, we also mix with the Yammer, the Yammer piece, the enterprise social piece included in Office 365. So really for customer is to realize the values that they have already in Office 365 and put all those pieces together in order to do their work done. Maybe another interesting feature, well, the people directory for sure is really interesting also because depending on the size of the organization, but very often you're looking for the good competencies. But here, what we want to showcase in this My Board page is a summary, for example, of your profile. So all this information is already in your profile and you can edit them. But you can have access, of course, to the saved information you want to read later, to the teams you're part of, to the recent documents here. You can even access your email, calendar, and tasks. So really, this is completely customizable for every customer. We do workshops to define the information architecture, the navigation, also the personalization you want, the audience profiling, etc. So everything is done during the project. And every intranet is different, actually. And we also release this feature to be able to export the intranet and bringing it to Teams, like you see here with this little shortcut. Also, maybe the icon is an interesting one because very often you want to welcome your employee, see what's happening inside for your next move in terms of job offers. Also have a look at news that are more social, not only corporate news, but could be an anniversary, could be a new baby was born, etc. And you can access all the policies documents in a single place. So really, those experiences are built together with customers because in mind, we introduce your own vocabulary, your own what we call taxonomy, the term that you will get, the tags that you will get on the news will help to refine your search, will help to target information. So here we have departments and location, but of course it could be any kind of metadata that we had on the content. We talked about also the events. So here, for example, we have an event center sample. When we display the event, you can register to the event, etc. So there's a lot of feature included in the intranet itself. Maybe For example, here you can see who is the contact for this event. You can register, unregister to the event. You can have a limited number of places, etc. Also, an interesting module that we released during the crisis is the capability to book your desk. So we call it the Flex Desk initiative. And basically, you have the map on the different level of your offices, and you can have a look at the offices, maybe reserve a desk for 1 hour, and you will receive, of course, a notification via email that this desk is reserved for Linda. And as another user, you can see that if I connect back to the Flex desk, then I will see that this desk is already booked. But what's interesting is there's a lot of use cases around that. We can use it for parking slots. We can use this for resources, for example, if you want to reserve a projector or something like that. But we were surprised that a lot of our customers, they took the widget to tweak it for another usage. So the Flex Desk is really one of the modules that we needed internally, and and the development team said, well, we can ship it to our customer, because I think if we need it, maybe other.
So this is especially here on the East Coast, where we're starting to open up, and you're starting to see a lot of businesses trying to set up policies around coming back to work and into the workplace where you might not be 100% open. You might have flexible seating, and you might have to have a lot more space in between. So this is a really great tool. And the fact that you can do it from right within Teams, again, and not to sort of berate the point, but the value here is that you never have to leave, and it's always available there. The other use case around this is the people directory. The fact that you can very quickly find the people that you need to be able to reach out to, especially as an organization where you're not all together in the same place. You're all dispersed across, it might be across the state, you might be across the country, who knows, you might be even across the globe. But being able to find the right person and then reach out to them directly in Teams, there's a huge value in that. So there's a lot of real world use cases that these features have been built around.
Well, Eric, if I could just jump in for a moment, I'm going to pick on a comment that you made too. I'm going to go back to employee onboarding. As we kind of move into these new ways of working, with folks being predominantly remote, or maybe 2 days in the office and 3 in a home office, I think the ability to provide this type of experience not only to a net new employee, but to your current employees, whether it be regional, statewide, or across the globe, I think provides tremendous value across the organization.
Absolutely. So and we plan to release, I think, the template for employee onboarding next month, so it should be available by the end of September.
Fantastic, because the onboarding is such an important key factor for success in any project like this. One of the questions actually that has come in before this chat started was around the process for rolling out either an intranet or a Teams implementation organization-wide. Eric, maybe you could talk briefly about kind of what the process is starting a project like this.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, Laurent kind of mentioned this already, but when you're going through this process, we really start with a deep discovery, because every organization is different. Every organization's needs are different. So you're spending time understanding, what are the needs of the organization as a whole? What are the goals and the objectives of the organization? And then you break it down into what are the needs of the individual users? What are the needs of the departments? What information do they need to be able to communicate and share? What are the things that the end users want to be able to access? Here Laurent is showcasing the ability to have sort of ads within the organization that you can kind of have like more of a social aspect to it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of build this up. There's a tremendous amount of flexibility in the platform. So there's we really start with that and then go through the process of elevating those needs into an actual use case here. Laurent, could we jump into Powell Teams and showcase?
Absolutely. So I will jump into Powell Team into the intranet. So to show you that we can bring Teams into the intranet. So basically, there's a link here on the top of my intranet pointing to, we call it Powell Teams, but could be the collaboration place. Well, community is not a good word, but let's say the collaboration teams. And basically, what you see here is the end user dashboard. So the idea is we are able with Powell Teams to categorize the teams, to add extra information. So like you saw in the search, I can refine the departments, the location, and find the right team that's relevant to me. So, and when I click, of course, on a team, then I get access to the summary of that team, and I'll be redirected directly to the right channel. Because also there's a lot of manipulation navigating from teams to teams, from channel to channel. So here you can search for the team, you can have a direct link globally to the team. So this is part of the intranet, but of course the better experience is in Teams. So at the beginning of the confinement, we launched a Powell Team product into the market. So basically, we are part of the Microsoft Store. So it's available as an application into Teams, and the name is Powell Teams here. And you can just install it into your Teams environment and make a trial for 30 days. So really easy to set up, really easy to use, because you wanted the user experience to be easier in order to create Teams template also and to enforce governance rules on the rollouts of Teams. So here I am clicking on Powell Teams. I am now redirected to the user dashboard. And as I have a lot of teams, it's loading the list of teams I have access to. So I could be an owner, a member of a team here. And basically what you see is we have a summary of the latest document, so what has changed recently on the team. And we have also the tags that you saw on the previous demo on the intranet that are available here. So I can filter the teams according to my department, location, and we added also this dimension of share with or review date for a team. But basically those metadata could also be adapted to your context, to your vocabulary. So it could be here a subsidiary, not department, could be different location, not countries. For example, could be in the US, etc. So for example, we have a customer in France that is using Powell Team because they are installing phone lines for DSL lines for the big providers. So they define that there's a tag that it's, for example, Orange, which is a big provider in France. SFR could be T-Mobile, for example, in the US, could be an example of that. And they put that as a tag. So the technician, when they go to the site, they can access directly the right teams that access documentation to do the technical work of plugging the internet into that home. So there's a lot of use cases where those tags could be used in terms of discovery and also in terms of finding the right teams quickly. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of teams that will be created. So you need to have this notion of organizing the sprawl.
Excellent. Yeah. Hey, thanks, Laurent. I've gotten another couple of questions, and some questions are coming in, and I'm also keeping an eye on the clock here. I want to make sure that we have time to sort of wrap up the discussion. One of the things that we'll do as part of the follow-up is send both the contact information for Lauren and for Eric. So if you're interested in seeing more about kind of the Powell software and how it rolls, that's something we can set up for you afterwards. But I want to make sure I've got time to answer some of these questions that are coming in. Lauren, this one's for you. Taylor's asked about kind of the types of organizations. What is a good size for someone to build this type of digital workplace?
Thank you, Todd. And Taylor, that's a great question. I think the answer to that, quite frankly, could be 50 employees. It could be 100. It could be 50,000. I think as we look across verticals, organizations are facing the same struggles, right? And at Powell Software, again, when we start to talk about adoption and digital workplace and employee engagement, productivity, and experience, an organization of almost any size is going to have those same challenges across any vertical. So we're not vertical specific. We're not just a true enterprise play per se. I think that the best way to answer it, Taylor, is if you're in an organization and what you're hearing is solving for some of your challenges, whether you're 50 employees or less, or 10,000, then this is probably a good particular point to solve those challenges, if you will.
Great. And again, we covered this a little bit. Are there any top 3 best practices in terms of implementation that you've seen that have made this successful, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first is knowing your audience and understanding, the people within your organization, the things that they need, especially now. We're all working from home. We all have our own personal challenges. I've got 3 kids at home that, aren't going anywhere. There's no summer camps and questionable about whether they're going back to school. So the flexibility that they need to be able to work and function and, being able to provide both the space that they need, digital and physical, and also providing them the information and access that they need, so that they can get the work done when they're able to, and when the organization needs it. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, just understanding the structure of the work that you do, to be able to put that in practice, because Teams is so flexible. I mentioned this earlier. It really allows and affords a tremendous amount of flexibility in how you can set it up and how you can organize it, whether you're using it for events, whether you're using it for projects, whether you're using it as a department communication, whether you're using it around, trying to collaborate on a specific document. There's so many different ways that you can structure it. So really having a deep understanding of how you work and then mapping that back to the way that it functions is really critical. Those are the kind of two.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. Who needs to be in the room? Who should you get when you're doing the discovery? Who are the key stakeholders that most organizations should think about gathering to do this work?
The first thing I would say is you need to have an executive sponsor. You need to have somebody from the top that says this is important, this is valuable, and we're making an investment of time, energy, and money to make this happen, and we're doing it for you as the employee, right? This is a benefit for the employee. Then you need to have the sort of key stakeholders, at least people from the departments, the people that are going to be, that need to be able to communicate out things that are valuable and important, whether they're HR, finance, corporate communications, marketing, operations. You need to have representation that sort of spans across the board. Those are the key people that I would say, and obviously people from corporate communications and marketing tend to be sort of on that list of people that are actively involved in that pretty regularly as well.
Awesome. I've got one more question, and then so we've probably got time for 2 more questions, and I've got one of them lined up. So to anybody out there who has a question, now is the time. Lauren, this one is for you. Somebody was really impressed with that flex desk module, right? The ability of Powell to sort of build something in responsive to allow companies to be nimble and adaptive to circumstances as they change. Maybe you could talk to that just briefly about sort of how Powell is going to be handling ongoing future changes, because I think the one thing that we're all fairly sure of on this call is there are going to be more changes coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, Todd, thank you for that. So, for the folks out there that are still with us, at Powell Software, we do want you to know this. From our customers, our prospective customers, and our partners, we ascertain feedback on a very regular basis. And the feedback that we do gather becomes prioritized internally at Powell, so that as we continue to evolve and go to market in these changing times, we're doing so together in the true spirit of a real partnership. So, the feedback that we get is absolutely invaluable. And I do want you to know this as well. On a very regular basis, on a monthly basis, you would receive from us a release manifest showing exactly what is slated to ship. And that is very real, and that is very fluid. So, Todd, to your point, it's important to us, as a technology pioneer in this space, as we start to really lead this particular category in our go-to-market, that we're solving real-world challenges that both our partners and our customers and prospective customers are being faced with. So being a young, relatively small startup, we are super nimble. And it's one of the things I love most about the startup space.
Okay, great. So, Eric, any final thoughts?
No, I think the title of our webinar says it all, right? I mean, the future of the digital workplace really is about bringing together your communication and collaboration channels, because everyone is focused on working within that digital space. That is the one thing that we have in common right now. We're all working in different places, either in the office or outside the office, but we all have this one thing in common, and that's not going to go away. That's not going to change. It's only going to get used more. So I think organizations that are investing in their digital workplace right now will be the ones that manage to get through this, because the truth is we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where things are going to end up in 6 more months.
Yeah.
We don't know where we're going to be in a year. I mean, there's lots of organizations that have said, don't come back to the office until 2022. And some have even said, don't come back to the office at all. We're not going to have an office. We'll meet up once a quarter in a location that we'll determine, and we'll use our overhead and invest that overhead back in our employees and in our digital workplace. So that I think is the future, and we're going to start to see that more and more, even as we come out of this, and we will come out of this. But when we come out of this, the world will be very different, and we should be prepared for that.
Great. Well, as changes continue, we will certainly be here to talk about them. We've got another couple of webinars sort of in hand, so stay tuned. And thank you both for your time today. It was great to hear from both of you. If you have questions for them, here's where you can hit them up. Thank you for your time and your engagement, and enjoy the rest of your day.